Good morning. I want to show you some thoughts I have about our community structure, make some recommendations for some consistency so we can get a better handle on our documentation and finding information. I think it all starts with having a good, clear understanding of how we're put together. And when we have this good naming structure or good understanding that's common, I believe that we will have a better experience in finding and organizing our information and our work. So to start off with, I just want to review some of the basic stuff we have and then just identify what the organization looks like as I see it. We have the plenary, which is our word for the whole decision-making community. That's our general meetings. This is where decisions are made. And we have a committee called the Plenary Focus, which shepherds and guides us through our decision-making. We also have a series of committees. Plenary, or the whole, delegates work to the committees to do at work, operations and spaces, outreach, C3, gardens, and the hands committee. For more about that, see our wiki page, community organization structure after move-in. Currently, the committee structure is like this. We have the plenary, the whole, co-housing group, which is the green rectangle. That's all of us. Off to the side, we have a group called the facilitation, and they help us with the meetings. But the main work of our co-housing group, our operations and legal and community outreach and gardens, is all managed by these committees: ELF, building, C3, spaces, and hands. We've also determined that committees can self-organize and create teams. Teams are like committees. They exist year after year. They're operational. It's a way of saying it. And they do a portion of the work of a single committee. We haven't formally, I don't recall us formally creating these teams yet. So these names may change. But there's an example, a C3 in our documentation. We've outlined that they have the meals, the outreach, connections, which is the conflict resolution. I'm not sure. I know that they're considering changing their name, and a well-being committee or team. There's rentals off of legal finance and the DevCo for team that's yet to be formed. So these are just sample names at this point. So I'd like to make some recommendations that we formalize something regarding teams. I think this just goes without saying. We need a contact person that reports to the parent committee, and just to identify that team members are not necessarily members of the parent committee. So I could be on the rental team and not on ELF, or I could, right? But this is the key recommendation for making our documentation simpler. A team needs to have a simple, clear, persistent name. Okay, when it comes to being formed. Now we also have something called a task group. The term task group has not yet been officially adopted. We might wish to change this term task group. But a task group, for now, is a specific set of time-bound tasks that need to be completed. For example, during the November 8th GM, we decided to, quote, form a task group to guide the community in revisioning the common house interior design. We went on to say the task group will report regularly back to C3 and spaces. This is when those committees were just getting formed. So the things to note is that task groups exist only until the work is completed. Usually this happens within a few months or less. And task groups can work on tasks that belong to more than one committee. For example, we have the committee that we just talked about, or the task group we called about. They did the common space visioning. Now again, the name is sample because we didn't formally adopt a consistent name for this task group. Task groups are either active or inactive. Or done might be the word to use. It's a simple 4-letter word. For example, in February, GM, the work of the visioning group was accepted as done, and we then formed a new task group, which consisted of many of the same members, but it was a reset to continue the work, to do some more further work that was specifically outlined in the general meeting. So we have this situation.
we have the common space visioning, which was the first group, is now in a done state, and that work is fixed and will not change. And we created a new task group, which has new documents and new information and new work and new outputs when it's finished. The next slide shows another example. We started off with a rental rules task group that was working for ALF and other teams, and it's now finished its work and complete. We do have the rental rules, but now what's happening is there's a task group or groups, I'm not sure, again, sample names, working on orientation and welcome packages. So these are just samples to show that they have a done state and active state. And just in case you're wondering why you are confused, this is just a possible portion of what's going on in our community right now. This is complex. And if anyone's feeling frustrated, not knowing where things are going, pat yourself on the back. You're normal. You're human. This is too complicated. But this is our life. There's no doubt about that. So how can we organize our information and simplify our lives with this much complexity? I have some recommendations. So first off, let's formally adopt a term for task groups. Call it what you might. I don't care. But let's formally adopt it and call it, and for sake of argument, let's call it a task group for now. So a task group structurally needs a contact person with each committee that has tasks for this group. So if the task group is working for C3 and spaces, there needs to be 2 contact people that will report to each of those 2 committees. It might be the same person. This is the key thing for helping us organize ourselves. A task group is given, when it's formed, a simple, clear, and persistent name. And that name cannot be reused. So it needs to be something that hasn't been used in the past. And a task group has a status. Let's just formally recognize that a task group status is either active, it's working, or it's finished. It's delivered its results to the committee, and the committee says, thank you very much, you're done. This can help a great deal. And so in summary, I have these recommendations for us that we do a little bit more formalization of teams and task groups, and as soon as possible, so we can start organizing our information, we give these sub-teams, sub-groups, these group of people working on something, a consistent and persistent name that's simple, that we can use for the folder structure and a wiki page for each of these. And that's all I want to say for now. The next slide deck that I'm going to present will discuss ways of organizing our information on our wiki and Google Drive based on these recommendations. Thank you.